about that. I see we had some connectivity issues, so I'm just going to invite Nabeelah back onto the call again.
Hi.
I see Sheryl. I am so sorry about that. Are you I'm not sure what happened, but I switched connectivity now, okay. So I think we should be fine. Okay, cool. So sorry, so I'm not sure at what part you lost me, but I think we were talking about the universities, and I asked you, do you think that our universities prepare our students for working world, and is that to do with
I think I got the gist of your question. You're still a little bit
You're
patchy.
still unable to hear me.
I think I'll answer you.
Am I still a little bit patchy?
A little bit, but I'll maybe start answering and then see if it gets a little bit better. So the program that we're running, the leadership development program, is for maybe people who've been working for a few years or at least a couple of years, because they would be working and writing board exams at the same time. But to answer your question, anyway, I think that to some extent university does prepare you, but there are these softer skills, these softer things that you could do extra, or that can actually bridge the gap. And I think it's that you only realize once you start working, or after a few years of working, what you were missing at the very beginning. You won't know going in. I guess it's all very new. And it's debatable, I guess, whether you fill the orientation week or the orientation period when somebody joins with all of this also, because it's then also a lot of information overload. So I think that's why we, kind of did it more for people who've been working for 2 or 3 years. You kind of solidify yourself in the position that you're in. You've been working for a little while, so you're used to that. And then it's like taking that to the next level. Like, okay, now I'm comfortable in my job, or I know what it's like to work at least. And now I can look at the nuances, for example, like the personality test, or, I can look deeper into myself, and then I can recognize when I'm speaking to someone else, what personality they are. And then that, gives me some almost power when I'm talking to someone else, or to communicate with them in their language, or their, so I think that's kind of where our program fits in. But definitely would consider going, a step into university even, because I think while ASABA is actually presented at the universities, we don't actually have like women's programs at the universities. We've tried to do things like, pre-exam high teas, and actually, kind of start that conversation, because the lecturers at the universities are also really keen. The female lecturers in particular are very keen for us to start getting involved there. So I think it will actually evolve and get there as well. So looking forward to that over the next few years, I guess.
I think that's amazing. Can you hear me now? I'm just checking.
No,
okay, so sorry about that. Not sure what's going on.
It's okay.
It's just our luck. But tell me, Nabeelah, do you think, I know in the actuarial space, there are so many more men than there are women. Are there challenges being in a male-dominated space? And if so, what are those challenges?
So I think it might not be specific to the actuarial space in terms of the challenges, but I think there are definitely challenges facing women in the workplace. And, some of them include, and it won't be a full list for sure, but some of them include the stereotypes or the unconscious bias that's still. And it's difficult to break, but I think it's a step forward in that. So while there are programs being run, like our Actuarial Women's Committee things, there are transformation programs being run, I think there's still a lot more that can be done. And I think what I've found is that some or companies still are very much focused on the diversity in terms of race or transformation within the company, but not necessarily gender transformation. So it's more racial transformation, and that's the big focus, and it should be the big focus. But we actually risk getting to a place where we are racially transformed and then only start then thinking about gender transformation, the two together, and not leaving the gender transformation conversation behind just yet. But yeah, bringing it all together. So yeah, definitely a lot that can still be done.
And tell me, what are some of the unconscious bias that you talk about?
It's examples of like women are seen as being more emotional than men. So even in the same setting, if they were saying the same things, it's that women are emotional, or they approach situations from an emotional point of view. And it's not, it's interesting that that's the frame. It's that women are emotional, not men are not emotional enough. So I think that's also from a historical point of view, the way things have in themselves think of other women, which is something that we need to change. I think also some unconscious bias or some biases that you find in the workplace are, people won't want to promote a woman instead of a man because she may or may not fall pregnant over the next year and be gone on maternity leave. But you won't have that same, thought around a man who may have a child over the next year. So there's a whole list of different types, and they've actually been classified into different types of bias that exist. So yeah, it's taking a step forward there, but the only way to kind of bring that is to educate people on the types of biases there are, make people aware of their own biases, and then also for women, if you see someone being biased, to then point it out. Actually, not just for women, for anyone who sees someone being biased, to actually point it out to them, because the only way for them to address their unconscious bias is to actually conscientize it for them.
So I love that you're calling it out right now. I think it's very important. But I'm a firm believer in calling things out. But I also know that there's a way of doing that, and there are going to be many women and men watching this now and in years to come, and they might be thinking, yes, experiencing this, and yes, we do need to call things out. Like how what advice would you give other women that are going through that? Like how would you advise them to actually sort of raise these kinds of issues?
So I think it's a tough one, depending on who you are dealing with, or who's saying it, and whether they're receptive to actually receiving constructive criticism, or open to actually developing themselves. So if they are, then I would say, approach them, and sometimes you also need to gather your thoughts around the incident that happened. So take time to do that. Think of a nice way to approach it, and then have the conversation with them, definitely one-on-one. So if you're in a group setting and something like this happens, don't call it out right then. Take the time, digest it for yourself, and then kind of have a one-on-one afterwards. Say, look, can I speak to you about this? This is how what you said made me feel. And often just asking the question to them. So sometimes you don't have to even point it out, you just have to get them to think about it themselves. So if somebody made a comment, and you kind of ask them, why did you say this particular thing? For them to actually think about that, and actually go through that process of, why did I actually say something like this? Or they might then think, okay, was it appropriate, and this is how it actually made me feel. So it's, that would be my approach. develop, you might start this conversation with them and then see that they're actually not open to seeing it for themselves. And then I would say, you need to bring to this.
I can hear you. I can hear you. Don't worry. Oh.
Sorry. Okay, happy.
Oh, so who's
This
that?
is Umar. He is shame teething at the moment, so I was really praying that he would sleep through this video, but clearly not.
But like I told you, and I think that that's probably something else that we can talk about is the fact that I don't know if you found like in the working world, for example, she's fine.
Okay.
So while Nabeelah is busy saying to a kid, I just want to. I firstly apologies. I'm not sure what's going on with the connectivity today. The first time it's happening, so please excuse us for that. Secondly, I also just want to say that I mean, I'm also in the corporate world, and so is Nabeelah, and we've actually had a discussion about, like kids and kids coming on calls and stuff like that. And I fully encourage that they come on this call because we're all human beings. We have she's got a young kid as well. The kid needs her as well, and I think that part of progressing and or women progressing is being able to be like, okay, I am a mother, and I also have these other things, and how can we do both, you know? And I mean, I think like a little kid Uber should not have to be like, oh, I have to wait for my mom now because she's on this call, because I think that he needs her too. And so I would like to encourage, and also other women that are listening to this and that have kids, I would like to encourage you to not be shy about the fact that your kid needs you, or not be shy when your kids come onto a video call or a Zoom call, because I think that that's just part of, firstly, we're living in a pandemic. You're working from home. Your kids are going to come, and I think your kids need you more than what your colleagues do, and your colleagues should be able to understand better than like a little 2-year-old. So I think I'm so glad. I'm happy that your kid has come on. I think that we are role modeling to other women that it's okay and that they shouldn't feel embarrassed or shy
Thanks,
about it.
Lubes.
Yes.
I think. Sorry, give me 1 second.
And then I saw a few comments as well. So I saw Nabeelah Firashia, hi there. She says such an interesting conversation as well. And you guys, if you have any questions for Nabeelah, that would also be great. Please do put them in the chat. This is about Women's Month. This is about celebrating women as well. And I'm totally I'm very comfortable with her. I don't want any woman to like feel shy about this. So I hope you find it better.
Thanks, Lubes. I just wanted to settle him. Yeah, I can hear
Can
you.
you hear
Sorry, I
me?
just wanted to settle him. Yeah,
Okay.
no, I fully agree with you, 100%.
Yes.
I think it's always, or somebody said to me once, they said, you know what, I have to, or, there was the kid was sick, it's from school, and they said, look, I have to leave this meeting, and it was a client meeting, but it's like, sorry, I have to leave this meeting. My kid needs me, and me in my job, and something that I just have with me. made plans to do something at a certain time, work can wait. But your kids sometimes can't. Can you hear me, Luke? Okay,
I can hear you. I can totally hear you. I'm so sorry about that. And but I can hear you. And I agree. Like work can wait, but your kid, when you have like a 2-year-old, your kid does need you. And I'm glad that like I said, I'm glad that it's being role model, because we are giving other women permission to also be okay if their kid needs them, even if they are on a work call, and that it's not the end of the world.
Thanks. You're so nice. I really appreciate that.
But I don't think it's about being nice. I think you were talking about the past, and you were talking about I think something you said earlier, where you said that you have this unconscious bias where women might be seen as a little emotional, instead of asking why are men not more emotional, for example.
Yeah.
And I think that not to say that I believe that people should or should not be emotional, but I think that that's like, it sort of speaks to how the working world is currently operated. Like, I mean, the fact that, for example, if we look historically, it was the men that were the breadwinners that were working, and women stayed at home. But now that things have changed, we also need to accommodate for women and their own lifestyles as well. And I think that that's something, and I don't blame men for it, because I think it was just the product of the way the working world was. But I think that nowadays, that things have changed, demographics have changed, even in terms of, like, you talk about race as well, and gender and those kinds of things. And so it's important to have these discussions and to challenge and to ask, like, is the current world of work still applicable to our lifestyle, and still applicable to the people that have joined the workforce? And so I believe in challenging as well. And so I think I want to sort of move a little bit forward now, and just ask you, I think this is a deep question, but I'm gonna ask you anyway. But it's okay if you don't know the answer now. But it's clear that with what you've been involved with, that you are very passionate about developing people. Why do you think that is? Why do you think you have this passion?
Ooh, it is a deep question.
What is it that drives you?
Sorry.
Shem, it's okay. You can see too. So there we go. Yeah. So I think I'll speak first, and I ask that is because I think part of the reason why I started Lumna HR was because I struggled in the working world, and I there were so many things that I wish I knew as a student coming, or a graduate coming into the working world, and that sort of motivated me and drives me to do these kinds of discussions. And so I think my question to you is then, what do you think is driving you to be passionate about developing people? What is it? What is it about?
So I think it's an interesting one, and I think it's one that I think really came, or my passion really came after I started working. So I think it was there also that I got the opportunity to join the Actuarial Women's Committee, and I think my eyes were opened a bit into so much that still needs to happen, or the inequalities that exist and for various reasons still exist. And I think from there it was a realization that I can actually make a difference. I can volunteer, I can be part of these organizations, I can do something a little. It's still moving the needle. So I think it was that, and I think it's when you see change from something that you're doing, or you know, somebody says, hey, you know, this thing that you advised me on actually made a difference, or some exam tips that you gave or study notes that you gave to someone else has helped them, you know, pass an exam, or, you know, it's that feeling that you're helping or you're making a difference and you can make a difference. So I think that really, you know, spurred on my passion. Is a product of, you know, both hard work, but also the support and the sponsorship of other people who've been involved in my journey. And it's that whole, you know, pay it forward, or somebody's helped you get to where you are and you're in a position now to help someone else. So why not do that? You know, it feels like, or it seems like an easy kind of obvious thing that you should do. And so, you know, even if it's the smallest difference, then make that difference to somebody's day. I read something the other day where somebody said they were at a cashier, and so you could see the lady was having a really bad day. So he asked her, like, what's your favorite chocolate? Like pretending to look for, you know, a chocolate for himself. And then she told him, and then he paid for it and then gave it to her. And that made like the world of difference. But it's like those small things that end up making the biggest difference over time. So yeah, so I would say go out and make a difference, even if it's a small one. We all have the opportunity, or not necessarily the opportunity, but we're all empowered enough to be able to try and make a difference, at least.
I think that's a lovely story that you gave, and it's a wonderful answer. I know I put you on the spot there, but I really appreciate sharing your thoughts with us as well. I also want to ask you. I mean, people on the call can see your little kid is with you at the moment, and you know, what are some of the challenges you face as a mother and being a career person? And then also, you know, heading up committees and being part of other committees, what are some of the challenges you face, and how do you manage to do all of this while still being a mother of two young kids?
Sure. It's the challenge is that there's just not enough time. There's not enough hours in the day. Because I think there's so much that I want to do, so much that I can still do, so much that needs to be done, and that maybe I'm able to do, but because of the time constraints, just can't get to. And I think that gets worse. Or you know, when you add kids to the mix, when you add more responsibilities to the mix. But I think it's at least trying to get some of the things done. And what helps a lot, I think, is the support. So I have my mom who looks after the kids during the day while I work. And I don't know if I would have been able to continue working if I didn't have her, you know, to help me look after the kids. So that's a huge relief for me. And I know the kids are in safe hands. So during the day when I'm working, it's worry about them, which makes the biggest difference. And then also having a supportive partner. So I think my husband helps a lot around the house with the kids. So that you know, it's that having that partnership to say, hey, look, I have a late meeting today. Can you bath him? You know, and then I'll pick it up afterwards. Or, you know, we have each other's backs, which I think really, really helps and really makes a big difference. So I think trying to do it without support is good. With support, I know is difficult already. And I think it's that there's always an opportunity cost. So my opportunity cost of being at work is that I don't get to spend the day with my kids, which was a difficult decision to make initially, and still one I think that gets questioned by myself and others often. But the fulfillment I get from my job and from making a difference in other people's lives, I hope that, you know, my kids will look up to that one day or understand that. And I think it's also that initially I was very hard on, you know, sometimes you feel like you're not giving 100% at home and you're not getting 100% at work, and you feel like you're failing all around. But, you know, again, it was a talk that I attended by someone, and they said there's no such thing as like a perfect work-life balance. It's more, you know, finding sometimes work's going to be the bigger aspect of your life and kids the smaller one, and sometimes the kids are going to take over and you need to give and take from that. And it's that finding that work-life harmony rather than the balance that's actually giving yourself permission for it not all to work out all the time, which I think sometimes I struggle with. Like I said, it's you want to be everything for everyone all the time, but it's just not possible.
And I think that that's such a big, like, I think that that's for me also. I think that's I think that many people sort of grapple with this whole concept of work-life balance, like you want to actually give your all at work, but you also want to give your all at home or with whatever you're doing outside of work as well. And it can be very challenging. So I like this concept that you talk about, that work-life harmony. It's a new way of saying it, and I think like you say, you still struggle with it sometimes, but I think that that's something that I think we're always going to be questioning, and I think my question then, so that's great, and I think so many women that I speak to, they always talk about having a strong support structure, that it allows them to then sort of go out there and do their best in whatever they do. And I think that that's also quite important for people to consider, when they're going into partnerships, what kind of relationship do they want as well, because it's going to have an impact on their home lives or motherhood, and it's going to have an impact if in their sort of careers, whatever they choose to do as well. So I think you make very valid points.
Yeah, maybe just on that.
I wanted to pick up on something.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, yeah, agreed. It's first knowing for yourself what it is you want to do. So if you want to be, a working mom, or you want to work, and it's being upfront with the person that you choose from the very beginning that we need to share the responsibilities, we need to do things together, and we need to have each other's backs, basically, So sometimes we'll flex, and sometimes I'll flex, sometimes he'll flex, and sometimes it'll be my mom who's flexing because we both have meetings, But it really does help to have the support system, or to actually just know what your support system is, whether there is or isn't one. And if you don't have one, to then put other things in place to make sure that you're still able to do the things that you want to do, or, get fulfillment from your job or from whatever it is you're pursuing at the time.
And that's great. And I'm glad that you're speaking about it. And I mean, I think I don't think we tell girls this, before, when they have a partner or they're looking to get married. I think that's like an important thing to think about. So I just see Asia Mohammed says Nabeelah is such an inspiration. So that's very lovely. I'm glad other people are saying it too. And I think I want to actually pick up on something that you spoke about. You spoke about, I don't have your exact words, but you spoke about, having this inner conflict within yourself and other people sort of putting pressure on you about the idea of when you sort of have to leave your kids at home. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, sort of, what were the feelings? What kind of feelings did you feel? What kind of external pressures did you experience, and how did you manage that?
So I think it's probably like, a cultural thing, or it comes from the traditions that women, you need to be at home, and you take care of your kids, and you need to be the one, the caregiver at home, and it's probably partially something I felt. I think, when I was in school, I was always like, I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom like my mom, and I'm going to be there for my kids. And that's what I wanted. And I think it's really, my mom was such an inspiration, and she was always there for us. She was the one who fetched us from school all the time, and she was so present in our lives. And I was like, I definitely want that for my kids as well. So, I mean, just a shout out to my mom that, I'm super grateful that my kids have her as well, to actually be there for them. But it was that conflict for me, is that's something that I thought that I wanted or thought that I would always do. And then when I started working and, I really enjoyed working. I'm passionate about what I do. I'm passionate about, like the committees I'm involved in, and the leadership development program. And like I said, there's so many things that I want to do, that I want to continue doing, that it was very difficult, or kind of put that on hold till the kids are bigger, which is what some people do, because then picking it up when you at such a early point in your career, I think it's different once you've established, you have your reputation, you've made a name for yourself in the industry, and then you take a break and come back. You're coming back to, people already know who you are, and you've already got this, kind of things under your belt. But when you're still young and starting out and still trying to make that reputation or make a difference, or, establish your career, it's difficult to say, look, I'm going to take time off. And I think, there's no right or wrong answer for anyone. I think you need to do what's good for you and what's good for you at the time, because at different times in your life, it might change. You might change. So don't be hard on yourself if you chose something initially and then change your mind. So chose to go to work and then decide afterwards that's not a good idea, I'd rather stay at home, or vice versa. It's okay. You need to do what's best for you. And I think regardless of what other people say, I think like when I went on maternity leave, I had a lot of people, well, not a lot of people, but there were people who made comments to me like, I wish you had taken 6 months instead of the 4 that I was given, or, people imposing what they think should be right for you on you. And, regardless of whether they were right or wrong, it's that doubt in your mind that gets created based on the social norms, or the norms create in somebody else's mind of what they think you should be doing. It's not a nice feeling, and it almost waters the seeds of doubt that are already present. But I think, sometimes people do it also not knowing and not being conscious of what they're doing to you internally. And it's something that only after I think I became a mother and started reading a lot of articles about that, sometimes you wonder, did I ever say things to someone else, that then caused them this anguish, or, planted doubts in their mind, because you're not doing it intentionally. But again, I think it's about educating people. And I think it's because we're in this phase where previously moms didn't work, and now we need to figure out how to actually deal with being working moms, and creating new social norms around that, basically.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think I totally agree with you. The fact that yes, it's new kind of working world now, and how do we sort of navigate around that as well? And I like what you say as well, that like you also pointed out that sometimes people might impose their views on you, not because they're trying to be mean or anything, but they
comes
they're
from
just
a good
trying
place.
to help.
It does, even
But
though
I've also
it may destroy you on the inside. They're coming from a good place.
Yeah, but at the same time, sometimes the only person that knows what to do is you. I think, but at the end of the day, it's your life, and you are going to be living with the choices you make. So it's important that you are comfortable and that you make the choices for yourself, so that you can live with it.
I was just going to say, because you're going to be the one who has to live with that decision every day. The auntie or that colleague or whoever judged you for taking the maternity leave or not taking the maternity leave doesn't have to live with your choices. You need to do what's best for you and your family at the end of the day.
That's wonderful. I think that's so important, and I think this discussion is very vital for women as well. That are maybe thinking about motherhood, or that are struggling, or that are feeling guilty about the choices that they make. It's important to actually sort of bring it out there and to talk about it. Vera, we actually have 10 minutes left. And I'm going to ask people that are on the call, if you have any questions or any comments for Nabeelah, please do post them in the comment section, and I'd be happy to read them out. But I also do want to sort of wind down now. I think my question to you is, do you have any sort of role models? Are there people that have inspired you along the way, and who are those people?
Sure, there's a lot. I think, my mom is an obvious one. My grandmothers, I think in my personal life, there are so many, even of my friends and family, who are just out there doing amazing things, or even just the way they go about their day and do something that may seem like normal, with the grace and just their nature, I think, really inspires me. So I think from each of the people that I surround myself with, there's something that inspires me from them, and there's something that I learned from them. And so I thoroughly enjoy having my circle or my friends and family around me, because I'm constantly learning and growing, and they're constantly pushing for me to do that. From a work perspective, I think there were various people along my journey who have been inspiring, but I think looking back, there was one particular person who I think was so keen on sponsoring me without me even knowing it. So it was a nudge in the right direction, or, it was you should join the microinsurance committee here, let me make it happen for you. And it was those things that, like I said, the way he did it was so effortless that I didn't even realize that he was actually sponsoring and guiding and shaping my career to where it actually is today. But he was an inspiration, and he was probably the reason why I, wanted to do what I'm doing. But on the topic of sponsorship, maybe just to take a slight derail, I think it's so important that but females in particular, have sponsorship in the workplace, and it's different to mentorship. Sponsorship, you may not even know that you have someone sponsoring you, giving you, it's that person who's putting the invisible box for you to stand on to get over the ledge. And it's really important for you to, if you don't feel like you have that, to actually consciously approach someone who's more senior than you, or who has influence, and actually say, will you be my sponsor? This is, kind of say, this is who I am, this is where I want to go. Will you help me get there? Because it makes a huge difference. And I think even in the, striving for equality for women, that is one thing that can make the biggest difference, is for us females to have more sponsorship in the workplace. And it doesn't have to be a female sponsoring you, it can be a male. But for you to actually actively go out and seek the sponsorship, I've seen the difference that it can make. And I definitely think that not enough people place importance on sponsorship. There's a lot of talk about mentorship and finding yourself a mentor, and finding yourself multiple mentors. And while mentorship is really important, mentorship coupled with sponsorship is what's going to make the difference for women empowerment or women equality.
So there are a lot of graduates that are on my page, right? So for their sake, can you explain what are the subtle differences between mentorship versus sponsorship? I know that you mentioned the invisible box, but what is the key difference between the two?
So a mentor is someone who guides you, who listens to the things that you want to do, who gives you advice in your career, who is there for you along the way, and can kind of help you steer your path. Whereas sponsorship is somebody who makes it happen. So I think for like an example in my life is I had a mentor who was like, oh, why don't you get involved in this committee, or why don't you do this, or put yourself out there. Here's the convention would be a great place for you to actually showcase yourself. These are the things that you can do. Kind of asking you the questions of what you want to do, and so the mentor relationship is very much a two-way street. Whereas in a sponsorship relationship, it's really about the sponsor giving back to you. So the sponsor there would be someone who says, I have an opening on the committee and here it's yours, if you want it, kind of join the committee because I can make it happen for you, or let's present at the convention together because I'll bring you along with me, or, kind of giving you the leg up. And sometimes it's also putting in a good word for you when you're not even there. So like I said, a sponsor, you may not even know you have sponsors. You may have multiple sponsors and you think, oh, I wonder how this person thought to get in touch with me, but it was actually one of your sponsors who said, hey, you know what, you have this job opening, this person would be good for you, here's the number, why don't you contact them and ask them if they're willing. So it's that, invisible hand that's helping you along or trying to push you forward. So that's, I think, the difference, or my understanding of the difference between sponsorship and mentorship.
So basically, somebody that's willing to actually put their neck on the line and invest in you and vouch for you as well.
Exactly.
So thanks for that, and I think it's important. I just saw a comment now, and it's Rehana, and she says, "I'm so proud to call her my daughter." So that's lovely. Thank you so much for listening. And she has actually spoken about how much she's been influenced by you too. So it's a congratulations to you as well. And then I see Nishat Janu says it's a privilege to know Nabeelah as well, and so that's lovely. We've got like 4 minutes left. I think if anyone has any more comments or questions, please do go ahead. I'll ask you one more question. Do you have any favorite books or podcasts or authors that you could recommend?
So there's quite a few. And I think recently, or over the last few months, the ones that come to mind are the 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma. So I think that talks a lot about those early hours of the morning and the secret to kind of success. So I enjoyed reading that book. Becoming by Michelle Obama. I just loved the story behind that and how inspirational she was, and the barriers that she was breaking during her time. So that, and then also I think a common one that everyone kind of recommends is the Lenin by Sheryl Sandberg. But yeah, so there's loads, and
I love it.
There's loads of different ones. But yeah, I think it's in reading it and then taking from it something to then add to your life that then makes the difference, or trying to apply an aspect of it, or using that as inspiration to do something different that then can really make the most impact.
So that's lovely. Thank you so much. I actually see. I don't know if she's still on, but one of my managers, Natasha Chapman, she introduced me to the book Lean In, and for me it just changed my worldview, and I just feel like that's a book that every single woman in the working world should read. So if she is still listening, I know I just want to say thank you for that as well, and I'm so glad to hear that the other people would also enjoy that book as well. Nabeelah, it's been lovely chatting to you. I want to apologize for the connectivity. I know that it can be very distracting as well. So thank you so much for your patience. I thought that this was another one of those golden interviews. I really enjoyed chatting to you. I am very proud of what you're doing, and I encourage you to continue reaching for the stars. And thank you so much for the work that you're doing, and thank you so much for
Oh, thank
joining
you
me
so much,
today.
Lumna. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this. I was very nervous initially, but I think the hour flew by quickly. So thank you so much. I really appreciate the feature, and I hope we can touch or inspire someone to make a difference in the world.
I know we will, but thank you again, and thank you everyone for joining, and thank you all for your patience with all the connectivity issues, and have a lovely evening.
Bye.
Bye. See you. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to thank you so much for joining us, and again, so sorry about the connectivity issue. Let's see, there's another comment, 9 Nabeelah, and that's from Michael's Carpet. But thank you everyone again for joining us. And I've got another one next week as well, also very inspirational, and I hope you guys